So we finally come to the last step to finish the shot. This is a very exciting step, post-processing. And the first thing I would do in post-processing is to add a depth field effect using the Z-depth channel. And normally when I render out the Z-depth channel, I would do a normalized Z-depth channel which contains all the depth information in this shot. And I would recommend to use 32-bit EXR to do the Z-depth channel. So we need to do a calibration to this unnormalized Z-depth channel using a grade node. So meaning that the result should be whatever the furthest from the camera in this shot should close to the black, and whatever is to the closest to the camera should be the white point. The next step, we need to figure out where is the furthest in this shot. I would say the furthest in the shot is probably the back end. Is the back end of the plate. So when we hover our cursor, we can get the pixel information is around 0.38 and 0.39 is the RGB intensity of the furthest point. And if we go to the last frame, we can find out that the chair handle is pretty much the closest to the camera, is close to 0.8. So very easy. We can just use a grade node and link to this our raw Z-depth channel, and we just need to set the black point to, remember, the furthest the pixel is about 0.38 and closest to 0.8. So after doing that, we just graded this Z-depth channel to whatever the furthest is close to black and whatever the closest is the white point. So this will give us a more accurate result when we apply the Z-depth defocused effect. We're going to use the copy node to shuffle this Z-depth channel into the mainstream and put it as the depth. Normally when I do the depth of field effect, I would just use a Nuke default Z defocus node. So if we set the output to layer setup, we can see how the defocus layer is set up. So if we move the focal point to the character's face, we see whatever in the red is too close to the camera, so it's out of focus, and whatever is in the blue is too far from the camera, so it's out of focus. And if we boost up the size for the defocus and maybe boost up the maximum a little bit, as you can see now we get some really nice depth of field effect, and even the armor closer to the camera is getting blurred too. The amount of the blur is up to you, depends on how much you want in this shot. I would just decrease a little bit so we don't overload our machine. This node is a pretty RAM heavy node, so be careful when you put in these huge numbers. And the next, after the second step in the post-processing, after depth of field, I would do a glow effect. And before we do the glow, it is always recommended to do a clamp of the whole image. So when we do the glow, we don't overexpose the highlight point. What would happen is if we don't clamp the color, the expo glow will just overexpose those highlight, and the whole image is going to just explode. So we just use the clamp to control all the pixels between 0 to 1, and here I use a Nukipedia node called expo glow, which will give you a sort of a two-stage glow, where you can see there's a very intense, very high intensity glow close to the highlight, and we got a very diffused outer glow spreading further away from the highlight point. And here I just use the pre-grade to concentrate the highlight point, and this is where I only want those highlight part to have the glow effect. And after this overall image glow, which you can see a little bit highlight sunlight there, I did another layer of the glow only to the reflection layer. And again, I only isolated those highlight points. So the secondary glow will give us some nice diffused, glowy feeling in the interior where the sun's hitting chair or the panels. And the next one is our favorite chromatic aberration. Again, I use the Nukipedia FXT chromatic aberration. In my experience, this one works pretty well. And one thing to pay attention is that the chromatic aberration only happens when it's close to the edge of the screen. So there will be less chromatic aberration in the center, and it will be more, almost like a radial. It's almost like a radial feather when it comes to the edge of this whole screen. After that, I would normally add a sharpen node. Here's a little trick to do a sharpen that I learned from Hugo's desk. Is that if we directly apply a sharpen node, and let's see what happens if we boost up the size, we see we get those very ugly black edge around the shadow and the highlight area. So in order to get rid of that, before we do the whole sharpen node, we use the lock to lint node to change the whole color space from linear space to a lock space. And then we do the all sharpen business. And after that, we use the same node to convert the color space back from lock to linear. So by doing that, you can see here's the comparison of with and without this color space conversion. With this color space conversion, we can actually control those ugly black edge when even though we boost up the sharpen amount to a pretty high value, we still have those black edge controlled pretty well. Of course, the last three steps is the first is the vignette. And just to give it, I normally do a two-stage vignette, and the first one is darken the corner, the second one is the brightening up the center, and a little bit more lens distortion, and the last step just to give it a very tiny grain. Here I actually have another module for color correction disabled because I think it's more of a subjective process, depends on your taste. You may not really like my cheesy green bluish tint. So that's pretty much it, everything for the first shot, and we actually covered a lot, all the way from the animation, importing the mocap data and setting up the camera, all the way to lighting and setting up the HDR environment, the ring particle system, and then lastly we talked about the compositing. So just a little recap of the compositing. The first thing we did is we reassembled all the AOVs in Nuke, and also we reassembled the light select module so we have better control of the light, and we replaced the screen content with the moving texture using the Nuke 3D system. And after that, we put the reflection layer back on. Also, we did the ring effect on the background and also applied the ring treatment to the refraction content, which is the pillar outside the windshield. And lastly, we did a little bit of post-processing, including ZDAF, sharpen, and chromatic aberration and stuff like that. So in the next chapter, we'll be talking about a little bit different workflow, starting from the animation, but we're going to end up rendering in Unreal Engine. So another very, very exciting section. I'll see you in there.
Purchase genuine tutorial. Enjoy the question answering from course tutor in the long term. Join the exclusive Facebook group and learn from each other. Also, you can sign up with yihu.com. Search for the course ID. Obtain the full learning courseware, project files. Follow us on Facebook. Get closer to become a master in CG field.